All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the blueprints of what industry insiders are calling the CFO's dream. We're talking about Meta's $200 billion infrastructure pivot. Our goal today is to faithfully unpack the raw data from these strategy documents, step by step, to figure out exactly how a social media giant is quietly attempting to rewrite the entire economics of global computing.
And it's honestly a staggering contrast to what everyone else is doing. Think about it. While the broader market was totally panicking, with AI cloud valuations plunging by up to 17% just on the fear of overcapacity, Meta was quietly, aggressively accelerating. The actual reality? In just the first half of 2026 alone, they gobbled up over 5 gigawatts of cloud and colocation capacity. They are locking down infrastructure while the rest of the market just kind of hesitates. So why are they doing this? Well, that's exactly what we're going to uncover.
So, here's how we're going to break this master plan down today. 1. The reality of the investment. 2. Financial engineering. 3. The paradigm shift. 4. Silicon independence. And finally, number 5, their core monetization strategies. Okay, let's jump right into section 1, the reality of the investment, unpacking that massive $200 billion CapEx commitment. Just to wrap our heads around what a $200 billion commitment physically looks like on the ground, we have to talk about Project Hyperion. Picture a sprawling 4,000-acre site that is literally 4 times the size of Central Park in New York. It's designed to house 7.5 gigawatts of power capacity, completely backed by 10 massive gas plants and huge renewable energy arrays. You see, data centers aren't just passive storage units anymore. This is a new, sovereign-scale asset. It's essentially a giant knowledge power plant. That brings us to section 2, financial engineering, Project Beignet, and protecting the balance sheet. Now, when you're making investments on this kind of massive scale, the ultimate question from any CFO's perspective is, how on earth do you afford a sovereign-scale asset without triggering a total financial meltdown on your primary ledgers? Well, the magic answer lies in a financial tool known as an SVP, or a special purpose vehicle. For those of us who don't live in the absolute weeds of corporate finance, an SVP is basically a subsidiary company created for one specific narrow objective. And crucially, it has its own completely separate off-balance sheet financial structure. This means it isolates risk and it can raise massive amounts of capital totally independently from the parent company. So here's how this plays out in Meta's genius strategy. Step 1, they establish an SPV dubbed Project Beignet in partnership with Blue Owl Capital. Step 2, they raise a mind-blowing $27 billion in debt directly through that Beignet SPV. And then, step 3, all that capital flows straight into hardware acquisition, buying up things like TSMC 3nm silicon and those massive Hyperion servers we just talked about. The absolute brilliance here is that Meta's core balance sheet stays totally clean. It's fully insulated from this huge debt burden, all while they successfully hoard the most valuable compute capacity in the world. All right, section 3, paradigm shift, moving from open ecosystems to the closed AI stack. You know, the old way of doing things was all about Llama, specifically right up to Llama 4 Maverick. That was the era of open weights, a really broad ecosystem focus, and building for generalized capabilities. It was essentially a reactive chatbot. But the new paradigm, Muse Spark, which is powered by Meta Super Intelligence Labs, is an entirely different beast. It's closed. It is tightly integrated right into their products. But the biggest shift? It moves from reactive, single-turn responses to multi-step, active reasoning. We're talking about a system that can break down complex problems, hunt for external data, validate its own internal logic, and just continuously execute tasks. But why close the ecosystem now? Well, it really all comes down to token efficiency. Meaning, it requires significantly less computing power to do the exact same amount of thinking. MuseSpark matches major competitors, like Claude, in raw intelligence. But here's the kicker. It operates at almost 3 times the token efficiency. We're looking at 58 million tokens per index cycle, compared to the absolutely massive overheads that competitors are dealing with. They are drastically slashing the cost per inference. And when you have a massive intelligence advantage like that, yeah, you lock it behind closed doors for sure. Section 4, Silicon Independence, the custom chip evolution and escaping vendor lock-in. Underpinning all of this is Meta's very deliberate escape from single vendor dependency. They're rolling this out in phases. Phase 1, which is where we are currently, uses the MTIA v2 architecture strictly for their internal recommendation systems. Then Phase 2 introduces MTIA v3 right around mid-2026, and that's heavily optimized as the core engine for generative AI inference. But Phase 3 is where things get wild. MTIA v4, codenamed Santa Barbara, introduces an industry-first integration of HBM4 memory. Think of this like taking a congested one-lane data road and upgrading it to a massive multi-lane superhighway. It shatters historical data bandwidth limits and brings all that raw processing power natively in-house. Now, for the IT decision makers tuning in, this right here is essentially your definitive survival playbook. The era of the one-size-fits-all GPU is officially over. Structural bifurcation is here. By deploying these custom ASICs, Meta is targeting a massive 65% reduction in cost per token. And another huge takeaway, air cooling is totally obsolete. When you're running next-gen chips that pull 700 to 1,000 watts of power, they will literally melt a traditional data center. Liquid cooling is no longer optional. It's absolutely mandated. Let's wrap up with Section 5, Core Monetization Strategies, the four-pillar fail-safe flywheel. So how do you guarantee a massive return on a $200 billion investment, even if your internal AI ambitions somehow hit a brick wall? You build a high-optionality flywheel. Meta's infrastructure is incredibly fluid. On the internal utility side, they have their strategic defense, powering Meta superintelligence labs to chase AGI, and scaling their massive ad recommendation systems, which obviously drives immediate internal ROI. But what if those stall out? Well, they can dynamically, instantly route that compute to external monetization. They can act as a high-end enterprise SaaS layer via Bedrock 2.0, or incredibly, they can just flip a switch and become a massive, short-term compute landlord using what they're calling the SpaceX 2.0 model. $48 billion. Just let that number sink in for a second. That is the annual revenue potential per gigawatt if they utilize this SpaceX-style bare metal rental model. By baking in 90-day cancellation clauses, they can charge massive premiums for short-term, large-scale compute to other tech companies who are absolutely desperate for capacity. Simply allocating just 200 megawatts to this model generates $10 billion a year in ultra-high margin revenue. It's staggering. And this strategy right here is exactly what's terrifying traditional infrastructure players. Because Meta holds zero financing burden on its core ledger, thanks to that slick beignet SPV we talked about, they are uniquely positioned to capture massive premium multiples in this blue ocean market. Legacy players, like Oracle, for example, they just completely lack the agility, the hypercooled infrastructure, and the off-balance sheet financing to offer these 90-day mega deals. Meta is essentially weaponizing its capital expenditure to absolutely crush legacy cloud providers. Which leaves us with a truly fascinating strategic reality to ponder today. We spend so much time in this space debating who is going to win the grand race to artificial general intelligence. But when you look faithfully at these source documents and blueprints, you really have to ask yourself, even if Meta's frontier AI models completely fail, haven't they already secured a massive victory by quietly transforming into the world's most powerful and profitable compute landlord? It's an incredibly brilliant, risk-hedged master plan, and it absolutely changes how we have to look at the future of technology infrastructure. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.